Mayor Frank Jackson and the City of Cleveland are committed to keeping your neighborhood clean and green through the use of the city-issued trash and recycling carts. It's safe, convenient, and mandatory. For more information, contact the Cleveland Division of Waste Collection at 216-664-3717.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 10th annual Mayor Jackson's annual Sustainable Cleveland Summit. So first, we're going to show a short video to kind of get you started, get those people in the back who are slowly making their way up. But a 3-minute video from Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. You know, the theme this year is around vital neighborhoods. And I think this is really a perfect video to showcase that. I also want to thank you for, there's a Browns game tonight, and you're not pre-gaming yet. So it's, 6 hours ahead of time, that is a possibility. So thank you for choosing us. As soon as this video is over, Mayor Jackson will come up and do some welcoming remarks. So enjoy.
Hi, I'm Brandon.
And I'm Carrie.
My name is Eugene.
My name is Sylvia Perez-Cash.
My name is Paulo.
My name is Penny Barron.
My name is Julian.
My name is Dottie, and this is where I live.
And this is where I live.
This is
where I live.
It's where I live.
Cleveland's fun. There's a lot to do here, a lot of really good people, really cool public libraries, as nerdy as that is.
I love that I can walk around the city of Cleveland, and every weekend there's a new ethnic festival. It's a blast and totally weird, and something that I never had growing up.
When I go to concerts, when I go to plays, I see a diversity of personalities.
the different cultures that Cleveland has to offer, and be able to be part of that and have our children learn all the different cultures is priceless.
What drew me to Cleveland was the idea that I could live here affordably. I chose to live in this neighborhood specifically because I wanted to grow with the neighborhood.
You have your options. You can have a brand new home if you choose to with tax abatement. You can have an older home.
School-wise, we had a number of different options. We have a couple of different charter schools, and then we have some options for public schools as well.
I don't want to live in a place where I have to get on a highway to go to work, and you get that in the city.
I'm an urbanist at heart. I choose to live in the city because I invest in the places that drive our economy. Buying from urban stores, supporting urban businesses is a big part of how I experience Cleveland. As a family, how we experience Cleveland.
We have grocery stores, we have the Heinen's downtown, pharmacies, we have the little shops here.
The restaurants, Playhouse Square, the Metro Park systems is absolutely incredible.
I could be anywhere. I could be at Slavic Village on an art walk. I could be in Tremont in the art walk. Vastly different communities, but they're still just, stone's throw from where I'm at right now. I just love that I'm able to experience so much in such a small space. It's just awesome.
The minute that we moved into this home, we met every single person on this block. They embraced us, looked out for us, they helped us. That communal feeling was instantaneous, it was genuine, and that's something that I hadn't felt in any other place. It's really special.
People matter here. Individuals matter here. And it's a lot easier to make a splash here. Big fish, small fish, it doesn't really matter.
I think it's important to keep these neighborhoods healthy and vibrant.
There's something kind of rusty and crusty about Cleveland, but it's very endearing and wonderful, and I don't know why you wouldn't want to live here.
It just keeps building and growing, and it really is a great place to be.
Good afternoon. And how are you this afternoon? Good, good. You know, I want to welcome everyone to this is the 10th annual Sustainability Summit, and it is as you know, we have a celebration year, and this is about vibrant neighborhoods. And I want to thank all of the sponsors, the volunteers, the speakers, all those who helped make this possible. And I want to really thank all of you who come every year and who have come for the last 10 years. And some of you, it may be your first. But I want to thank you for being here and showing the interest that needs to be shown in the area if we as a city are going to move into the future. And finally, I want to thank the Flourishing Leadership Institute for facilitating this summit. This is the third year in a row that they've done it. Now, 2009 is when I created Sustainable Cleveland 2019. And the purpose of that was to really focus on supporting business growth. And I know that may sound contrary to some people. How do you deal with sustainability and green practices and business growth? But we wanted to make sure that our private sector knew that it is not contrary to their business interests or their bottom line to be sustainable and green. So we want to focus on that, and at the same time protecting our environment and creating opportunities for individuals to prosper and share in quality of life. Because no matter what we do, if at the end of it, people are no better off as a result of it, then all we've done is had a wasted exercise. And so we want to make sure that when we do things, that is part of sustainability. It's just not the environment, it's the sustainability of whatever we do for the benefit of people to ensure that they are able to participate in our quality of life and the prosperity that we create as a community, both in the public and private sector. As I said, this is the year of vital neighborhoods, and one of the examples I can give you that we're doing from the public-private partnership is our neighborhood transformation initiative that is really focused on a portion of the city that is one of the most distressed areas of the city, in attempting to create an economy there that does not need perpetual subsidy in order for it to thrive and survive. And we're doing that in partnership with the private sector. And that partnership is essential for it to work. It cannot work without that partnership. Matt Gray, my Chief of Sustainability, will talk to you a little bit about that, but he also will talk to you about the Climate Action Plan and the work that we're doing there. And he'll talk to you about hopefully some of the investments that we're making in our infrastructure, in our parks, our playgrounds, all those things that adds to quality of life that are part of the investment that we make as government. So again, I want to welcome you all to the 10th annual. Next year is the final year for this Sustainability Cleveland 2019, unless we want to go do 2029. We'll figure that out later. And next year will be the year of the people, to see if over these past years, from 2009 until 19, if what we've done has improved the lives of the people of the city of Cleveland and has incorporated good, sound business practices that are environmentally friendly and that are sustainable. So again, welcome and thank you for being here.
All right, welcome again. That's real intense walk-up music. I'm real pumped right now. So welcome again. Thank you for being here, taking time out of your very busy life and really sharing your expertise and passion with the community. That's really what this summit is all about. I also want to recognize the sponsors, of course, for your money, but really all of you are really partners in this work, and we would not have made the progress we've made without you and how you're leading by example in your own work, so thank you. And of course, thank you to Mayor Jackson. You understood very early on in this work that it's challenging. Creating a sustainable economy is very hard, and it really takes a commitment over the long haul. So to have a mayor who's done this 10 years in a row, I think that's where this progress comes from. I think all of us know it. Sometimes it can feel like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So you really need that steady hand. So thank you, Mayor, for providing that over these 10 years. Okay, I also want to recognize our staff from the Office of Sustainability. Anand, Kathy, Erica, Kristen, Felina, Rachel, and 2 new staff, Libby and Michaela. Michaela's our Cleveland Foundation Fellow. Thank you for all you do. And especially Kristen for the summit. It feels like she's a full-time event planner, along with all the other stuff she does. So thank you so much for everything. Give Kristen a round of applause, please. Okay, so now for this talk, I really want to focus on 3 overarching topics, each of which will surface throughout the summit and really our work over the next year. So number 1, Sustainable Cleveland Overview, kind of the celebration year for vital neighborhoods, as the mayor referred to. Number 2, launching this climate action plan. We're really, really excited about that. Now's the hard part, implementing the plan, as we all know with plans. And number 3, announcing our plans where we have them to date for next year, 2019, the culmination of this initiative and also the 50th anniversary of the last time our river burned. So, first, the summit and Sustainable Cleveland. So, what do we really hope to accomplish today and tomorrow? Sustainable Cleveland, first and foremost, is a community of people. That's why, as the mayor mentioned, 2019 is the year of people. The summit is an opportunity, especially I think for us, is to renew and engage. Certainly connecting with old friends, but I think meeting some new friends. Sometimes it's hard to quantify what comes out of these, and I think sometimes it's just a simple conversation you have with someone, which then leads to a partnership down the road. So just renewing, engaging, and connecting here is maybe the most important thing. I think it's clear as a whole we are making significant progress in Cleveland, although some days it may not feel like that. We work so hard throughout the year. We can forget to celebrate sometimes where we've come, so we're going to celebrate as well. And above all, the summit is designed to innovate around accelerating this progress we've made, especially over the next year. Finally, we can begin thinking about what happens a little bit beyond 2019. And there's actually a whole breakout session tomorrow specifically on that. We pay great attention to who attends this summit. This is because we believe to advance the entire community, you need the entire community in the room. So who is in the room? We have Clevelanders from all walks of life, business people, advocates, government officials, retirees, artists, neighborhood climate ambassadors, and much, much more. And many of you I know wear many, many hats. We also have some Nordic visitors here, a delegation from Sweden and Norway, looking to bring lessons learned back to their countries. If you're here, could you stand and be recognized? There they are. Cool. Welcome, welcome. So renewing and engaging, because this is our 10th summit, we have participants with a wide variety of experience, right? People who are brand new to sustainability, this may be your first sustainability event, and that's a great thing. And people who, of course, have done this work before, it was called sustainability. So summits really thrive on this mix of perspective, among the participants. For just about half of you, this is your first summit, so welcome. We need your new ideas and energy. On the other end, about 50 of you, I believe, were at the first summit in 2009. And I believe a handful of you, of course the mayor, but many others have been here for all 10 summits. So if that's you, you definitely deserve to be recognized. Can you stand up if you've done that? Ooh, we got one over there, Nicole. Awesome. Yeah. Well done. Yeah, you should probably be giving this speech and not me, actually. Youth as well. Again, we want everyone in this room. About 20 youth have been selected as the third cohort of the Youth Sustainability Leadership Program. They will be here all day tomorrow. But if you were also able to attend today, the high schoolers, can you please stand real quick? Let's see if some. Yes, they are here. Great. Thank you. Thank you for coming. These student leaders will be developing over the course of the school year a sustainability project in their neighborhood or in their school. So we really can't wait to see what they come up with. This summit is a great opportunity to really kind of serve as a catalyst for what they work on. These values here have driven the initiative from the start. It's meant to be dynamic, cumulative, right? Year over year, we're kind of building on that progress. We build from strength and not so much focused on, fixing perceived weaknesses, let's say. We're inclusive, welcoming, and really bold, but realistic too, and really want to focus on achievable solutions. Above all, Sustainable Cleveland is about action and taking action. It's a resource that helps us all, I hope, make smart, sustainable decisions, again, at home, at work, or in our neighborhoods. This emphasis is also in the Climate Action Plan, which I'm about to go through. And on the resource tables in the back, there's some great resources for you on sort of easy next steps in terms of action. So definitely peruse that later. In the heart of Sustainable Cleveland, especially in the early years, has been its working groups. They often formed at summits to achieve specific outcomes. A number of working groups, we're calling them graduates here, for lack of a better term, have morphed over time into their own separate organizations, which is a huge success story. Over the years, more and more sustainable work, I would say, has also been integrated, institutionalized, into existing organizations. And I think that's also a success, is how do you maintain over the long haul? You need that integration. I think we've seen that, especially in recent years. So the result we see today is a pretty, I think, strong foundation of organizations and some working groups, of course, leading the way. Just as a case in point, tomorrow we'll be focusing on 22 separate breakout topics that we've identified as, areas we have momentum, but we can use this summit to really catalyze additional momentum. And all 22 of those have an owner. They have a topic lead who will take what we do today and tomorrow and advance that further. And I think that's a real accomplishment in and of itself. Sustainable Cleveland is also organized by celebration years. 2018, again, is the year of vital neighborhoods, and next year is focused on people, as the mayor said. We work on all of these topics here all the time, but this annual topic really gives us an opportunity to focus and shine a light on those. This year is exciting because it's given us a chance to, let's say, integrate the previous celebration years, so local food, energy efficiency, clean energy, transportation, green space, all those, and how does it work at a neighborhood level? And how does it work for all neighborhoods in the city of Cleveland? So that's been a big focus this year with the celebration topics. The mayor mentioned this briefly. This is the Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative. It's a great example of this. It's a systematic approach, right, to provide sustainable and equitable opportunities to build wealth and stabilize neighborhoods, but also preparing for that later growth, right? So it's a really collaborative effort among many city departments, economic development, community development, city planning, and others. The city is leveraging $25 million of our own with $40 million from the private sector. It's focused on commercial development, residential, and entrepreneur and workforce training. And the current target areas are, as the mayor mentioned, Circle North, that's Glenville neighborhood, Buckeye Woodhill, the East 79th Street corridor, and Clark Metro. So you'll see in the back of the room a little more information. But this is a great example because it is bringing a lot of those things we care about into one initiative, and specifically this project here. It has retail, it has co-working space, 63 residential units. At least 20% of those are going to be affordable. It's going to be built to green standards. There's going to be also outdoor space to recreate. So again, a lot of these topics in kind of one project. So it's really exciting, and we can't wait to see what obviously comes forward with this whole initiative. We also measure. Cannot manage what you're not measuring. So we have a dashboard of indicators, 28 indicators online if you really want to geek out on all that. But these really do inform our strategy. They highlight our progress, and they communicate what's important to us as a community. So the indicators are in 4 areas. So the business, social, built, and natural environments. So this one here is just one example, and it really connected to neighborhoods. So it shows how over time, vacant lots in the city, which historically had been viewed purely as a detriment, how do we turn those right into assets? So this shows in a chart how many of those vacant lots have been sold or leased, again, to kind of become neighborhood assets. And this is what we want to see, right? That number is going up over time. And finally, before I move on to the plan, this initiative from the start has been around sustainable economic development. You may have noticed there's a lot of talk around town about kind of rethinking our approach, both in the city but the region, around economic development. And that's a healthy thing. I just want to encourage us all to put sustainability at the forefront of that conversation. These headlines here are just from the past few months, but they show how taking climate action and shifting to a sustainable economy can save tons of money. It can create tons of good green jobs, and it supports corporate performance. It really does hit that triple bottom line of sustainability. So we've made some good progress in creating a sustainable economy since 2009, but I think we can do much more as we move forward. So that's some of the background. I'm going to move on to really speaking climate action and our climate action plan. We've launched this plan as of yesterday, so it's hot off the presses. There's a lot of pages online if you really want to go into it. There's also a 2-pager in your bag, so that's a nice summary for you. So this is really going to lay out what we're doing over the next 4 or 5 years. So our first community-wide plan was developed in 2013. Many of you helped with that. And like the update I'm about to share, these actions were prioritized for that triple bottom line. So is it good for people? Is it good for the planet? And is it good for profit? And I like to say, even if climate change didn't exist, which it clearly does, all these actions would make complete sense from that perspective. We really think these actions really do represent a great way forward for the city. Again, that progress we've made, over 9-10 years. Here are just some, top line highlights. Water quality, right? Water quality is improving. Here's some walleye being caught out of the Cuyahoga, unimaginable years ago, right? Economic activity and recreation increasing on the Cuyahoga. We see that all the time. Significant progress in completing this first freshwater offshore wind project in North America. You've probably seen the news a lot lately. It's going through that permitting process. There's probably 45 agencies that have to approve this thing, so it is very difficult work. But we are making progress, and hopefully by 2021 we will have electricity coming from turbines and the like. Bike infrastructure. So since just in the last 4 years, we've added about 70 miles of bike infrastructure in the city. We're a national leader, still considered a national leader in creating a local food economy here. We launched the Cleveland Tree Plan and have been very busy implementing that with about 30 different organizations. Air quality, it has improved, which is especially important for people with asthma, other vulnerable populations. There's still more work to be done, but we have seen improvement. And I'd say maybe most important of all, we've engaged over 10,000 people in this work, since 2009. And our carbon footprint, it is down. Economic activity is up and our neighborhoods are stabilizing. So if you compare 2010 to 2016, we've seen about a 2% decrease in our emissions as a community, and we expect more decreases next year in 2017. Now, if you look at our emissions per economic output, right, or GDP, gross domestic product, our emissions are down 13% since 2010 compared to 2016. So that's more emissions and then really divided by GDP, and that's how you get that 13% improvement. So what's going on here? As a whole, our electric grid is cleaner. because coal is being increasingly replaced with natural gas and renewables. But these gains are being offset somewhat, and we have to just be upfront about that. Certainly from industry, but also transportation. And a lot of that is due to the economy. With the economy rebounding, we're making more stuff, right? And we're driving more as a community. So even though, our vehicles as a whole are getting more efficient, and we're making stuff, we're making things like steel more efficiently than we used to, that is not, offsetting the rise in emissions, from industry and from transportation. So, finally, and if you look specifically at city operations, right, so our buildings, like the rec centers, City Hall, if you look at our fleet, places like the airport, public utilities, we've reduced 15% since from 2010 to 2016 for city operations. So we definitely look at that as having to lead by example, right, in the community. So that was a lot of data. Just thought it was important, so I threw it out there. So, the city has also been steadfast in its commitment to climate action for some time, and we are increasingly getting recognized for that. We won national recognition from the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the World Wildlife Fund just last week. And among, thank you. And among 150 U.S. cities that signed a global covenant of mayors for climate and energy, we are one of the first 10 cities to demonstrate compliance. So we're not just saying we're going to do it, we're actually doing the work. And maybe my favorite, earlier this summer, of the 570 cities that report globally to the Carbon Disclosure Project, essentially, all these cities report their emissions and make it publicly accessible. Cleveland was named one of the top 5 cities globally in that, along with Paris, Sydney, Durban, and Mexico City. So there's a lot of people who help with that. We'll call out our energy manager, Anand Natarajan, who really manages a lot of our energy data. And he's just done a great job on that work. Okay, so going back to last year. So when the U.S. pulled out of the Climate Paris Agreement in 2017, it quickly became clear that really local government, counties, cities, states, businesses, universities, we all had to take more leadership in this work. So Mayor Jackson, along with climate mayors across the country, reaffirmed our commitment to action. We also realized about this time, that the world was changing very quickly, and it changed a lot since even 2013 when that last plan was released. And that really, we needed to refresh our approach to this work. So we applied for a grant. That's what we do in city government, especially in a lot of sustainability offices across the country. We got it, Partners for Places grant with support from Cleveland Foundation and Gunn Foundation. And thus began over a year of deep engagement with the community, over 90 organizations, many of you here, about 300 residents, all providing input into what we should be doing going forward in this work. And we also didn't want to just plan. We wanted to implement at the same time. Was that possible? So with support from Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, with IOBI in our backyard, is what that stands for, we led 12 neighborhood workshops. And out of that process, developed and are implementing over 20 neighborhood-based resident-led projects, climate action projects in the community. And these projects all receive matching fund from the Cleveland Climate Action Fund. And these projects range, right? There's one that's solar on a food pantry that needed it desperately and needed upgrades to its electrical wiring. We have pocket parks of these projects. We had projects that recycling building waste, down the line. So just so much innovation out in the neighborhoods and from our residents. It was really just exciting to see. I do want to call out specifically Indigo Bishop, Bianca Butts, and Erica Mishkat from our office for leading a lot of that work. You guys did an amazing job. So the result is a big plan. 82 pages, again, 2-pager right in front of you. But it's really centered on neighborhoods and really this year of vital neighborhoods and thriving and resilient neighborhoods for all. The plan includes 28 objectives and 108 actions, with specific key stakeholders across these 5 focus areas you see here, along with these cross-cutting priorities. So the cross-cutting ones are equity. More than anything, I think this plan is really built on a foundation of fully, exploring racial equity and what that means for sustainability. We're really just beginning that conversation, and what it means for climate action. So we engaged a lot of folks on that. Good green jobs across all these areas you see here. What's the job component? Where can we grow jobs over the next 4 or 5 years? Business leadership, and then resilience to the impacts of climate. They're already happening, and they're projected to get worse, certainly as we see recently on the coast, but also in the Midwest. So that's kind of those cross-cutting pieces across the whole plan. Now I just want to highlight really one major goal in each of these 6, just to kind of give you a sense of what the focus is and what the priorities really were from residents. So, first, energy efficiency and green building. We see, by meeting these actions, $170 million in savings we can meet for businesses and residents through implementing this plan. Clean energy, we're committing to 100% clean energy by 2050 through this plan. Sustainable transportation, and that's connected a lot to air quality. So in talking with the experts, we feel by 2021, we can get an attainment for air quality. So what does that mean? The people will breathe easier. Things like ozone and particulate matter will drop enough to be an attainment for that, which is also an economic development driver to get attainment. Vibrant green space, one example, a 10-minute walk. A 10-minute walk to a park. So right now in Cleveland, 80% of people are within a 10-minute walk to a park, which is actually pretty good compared nationally. I think the national average is around 65%. But the long-term goal is how do we get to 100%? How do we think through that? And especially as city planning goes through a comprehensive plan update, that's one lens to really see that work. How do we make sure, from an equity perspective, we all have access to green space? Same with food access and food deserts. There's goals in the plan for that, and a lot of that adds up to the overarching goal. So we're staying with the same goal we had in the first plan, 80% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And we think we can get there, but we all need to be in on that. So I'm just going to, in this last piece on climate, I want to just kind of highlight a few initiatives that even just in the last week we've seen progress on. Again, there's so many more initiatives we could talk to. These initiatives on their own aren't going to solve all our challenges, but I think they do highlight some of the innovation and dedication we see in Cleveland. The first, just going to highlight here, is Lights Out Cleveland. The idea is simple but powerful, right? During bird migratory season, in the fall and the spring, to have buildings turn off their lights at night, because otherwise birds are attracted to that light and many die as a process. And of course, this also reduces energy use. So we're happy to have City Hall, as well as our Department of Public Utilities building, 1201 Lakeside, has signed up for this. And about a dozen other buildings downtown, I think University Circle, have started that. So there will be a breakout tomorrow to kind of get more businesses and building owners interested in this. So yeah, that's one action that over the last week we've seen progress. Another one, maybe you've heard of it, the Global Climate Action Summit. It was in San Francisco. One thing that was announced there was a multi-city effort to purchase electric vehicles. 19 cities and counties, including the Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, participated. And by going to electric vehicles, we can reduce our emissions significantly. And the idea is also by buying in bulk, right? All these cities buying together, we reduce the cost of purchasing those vehicles by 15 to 20%. So you can imagine this type of approach, right, working for a lot of other areas and what cities can kind of purchase together, or any entity really. And the last one I'll mention is trees. The Cleveland Tree Coalition continues its progress on implementing the plan. We've seen great innovations over time. The Cavs Trees for Threes program. So every time a Cavs player hits a three, they're going to plant a tree. The tree steward trainings from Western Reserve and Holden is a great example. But in order to meet our goals, the city is committing to planting trees and maintaining them, but we also need the private sector, and we need to plant on private land. It's really the only way to get there. So Sandra Albro, who co-chairs our Cleveland Tree Coalition, with support from the Climate Action Fund and the Seward District, they're launching this Cleveland Community Canopy Pilot with the Arbor Day Foundation. So they're going to distribute 125 trees to interested Cleveland residents this fall at no cost. There's a free tool that allows you to choose your tree. It allows you to figure out where to put the tree to actually maximize your energy savings in your home, for instance, and have it shipped really directly to your house, which is pretty cool. So if you're a Cleveland resident, you're at the summit, there's a table in the back. You can even sign up at the summit to get that tree on your private land. So we're excited to kind of move that forward. Okay. So, and then the last piece I'm going to talk about is this third overarching theme, and that's celebrating next year, right, with an eye toward the future. So at last year's summit, Mayor Jackson announced formation of the 2019 Steering Committee, and we posed this question, like, how do we best mark the culmination of this initiative here and the 50th anniversary? And we had a great brainstorming at that summit, tons of ideas, and those were brought to the Steering Committee, which then has 4 subcommittees, and we've really run with that. And this heart of words you see here, it kind of shows what this committee is excited about when it comes to 2019, and it really runs the gamut. At this point, I think we've engaged around 100 organizations in this planning, so thanks to you all, many of you in this room, and we expect many more as 2019 approaches. So the plan for 2019 really falls in 2 big buckets, acknowledging certainly overlap between the two. The first is the culmination of the initiative of Sustainable Cleveland 2019. It's focused on finishing strong, celebrating 10 years of progress, and really building towards that even greater future. The second bucket is focused on clean water specifically, and marking that 50th anniversary of the river burning. It was on June 22nd, 2019 will be that 50th anniversary. So, this moment really provides a very unique opportunity for us, I'd say in 3 areas. 1, redefine really how the nation views our water, but also the entire city, and I think we all know that. 2, share Cleveland's progress in bringing that river back to life, and all the people who have made that possible over the years. And 3, setting that stage for future action. The 2 logos here represent those 2 buckets I talked about. One of the breakouts tomorrow will focus on the 50th anniversary, this kind of base logo you see here, but building out that messaging, that communication going into next year around water. In the city's role, I guess it's similar to what we're doing here with the initiative with regard to water. It's kind of being that convener, creating that platform for engagement across the community. And then across all of these, we're looking at arts, events, outreach, and driving action, especially in business and neighborhoods. And that's really what I'm going to talk about at the end here, is what that looks like so far. And we're really excited about this progress. So the arts, let's start there. I'll give you a brief sketch here. So, how do we connect Cleveland's story with people locally and really around the world for this event? So the Cleveland Foundation has really stepped up through its Creative Fusion initiative. This program is a 2-way exchange between international and local artists around a common frame. The example you see here is from a mural project in Ohio City. So in 2019, that frame will be Waterways to Waterways. There will be at least 6 exchanges that really inspire continued progress in Cleveland, but also globally. So there'll be more information on this to come in the coming months. And then we have many partners. Cleveland Public Theater, they're remounting Fire on the Water. I don't know if you saw it the first time. It's pretty amazing. There'll be a refresh there. Cleveland Museum of Art is bringing in world-renowned artists around this theme for about 4 or 5 months. Cleveland Hopkins Airport's going to have an exhibit all around water, and many, many more. So we're just really excited about how the arts is going to be integrated. And then, of course, events will be a major focus. We've already identified about 40 throughout the year in all areas of sustainability. That'll be part of the culmination of this initiative. My focus here is around anniversary weekend. Unlike most of 2019, I think the anniversary is the opportunity for the nation to kind of see as a whole what we've done, and even internationally. So I commend all these partners who've come together on aligning all their great work with this unique opportunity. All in all, I would say we are on our way to really having the largest clean water event in the country next year around the anniversary, which is really exciting. Before the anniversary itself, there'll be a series of events right here. We're thinking June 19th through the 21st. That's a Wednesday through a Friday. Just kind of talk through a couple. West Creek Conservancy is coordinating an Extinguished Torch Fest. It's going to begin at the headwaters of the river on the 19th, make its way down the river, right, to Kent's, to Akron, to the National Park, and all the way down to the mouth of the river on the 22nd. There will be an actual torch, so stay tuned for that. Peter's right here. You can get all the details. Other existing events like Edgewater Live, Wade Oval Wednesday will align with this water theme. And we're really excited to have Burning River Fest move to this weekend next year because that just makes complete sense, as you can imagine. So finally, these days we'll also focus a lot on policy and innovation. Cleveland Water Alliance is planning another great innovation challenge. City Club is planning a major Friday forum on that 21st. River Rally is a national conference that's going to be in town that week, and early development of a clean water symposium around policy. So the idea is when we look back at the progress since '69, it's been based on that local action and federal policy. And the fire itself, of course, helped lead to the creation of the EPA, which then led to the Clean Water Act. And today's threats to the water, plastic pollution, climate change, algae blooms, invasive species down the line, it's the same formula. It's local action and federal policy. And I think this weekend presents a huge opportunity to raise that conversation up. So we're excited about that opportunity. The 22nd, the actual anniversary, the focus will be on the river itself. There'll be some policy stuff, but this is going to be a big party. We'll have activity on the east bank, on the west bank, 4 miles for water from Drink Local, Drink Tap. They're going to have their run that morning at Jacobs Pavilion. Jacobs Pavilion is going to have stuff all day. Rivergate Park, Merwin's Wharf, if you've been there, that'll be a great recreation hub for the day. We're going to open up the subway level of Detroit Superior Bridge. Quick show of hands if you've been on that streetcar level of the bridge. It's pretty amazing. That'll be the one day it's open next year. And it makes sense as it crosses the Cuyahoga. So we're really going to activate that with the county, with ODOT, with Urban Design Collaborative and others. Open Streets Cleveland is going to connect these events with really celebrating health and sustainability on our streets. Burning River Fest, again, Blazing Paddles is going to have a stand-up paddleboarding race. And we're going to have boats all day on the water. So stay tuned. Definitely save that date. It's going to be a good time. And finally, the 23rd is what we're calling Lake Day. So this is going to be focused around North Coast Harbor, the Great Lakes Science Center, Rock Hall. They're going to be doing some cool stuff. Right now, the plan is for Cleveland Foundation to have their Common Ground event on the 23rd around an environmental theme. So there'll be a day of community conversation, probably 100 or so conversations, really sharing a meal and creating space for dialogue. So again, a big 4 or 5 days there, and we'll be doing a lot of planning over the coming weeks. And finally, Destination Cleveland. They're in the early stages of its Visit Me in Cle initiative, and that's actually taking place over this weekend as well. So the idea is simple. Show off Cleveland to your friends and family, because more people in Cleveland means more fun. So again, what I presented is by no means exhaustive, and we expect more, but hopefully this gives you a sense of the scale we're thinking and the opportunity there to really raise the level of dialogue. Thanks. And the last thing is looking towards next year as a milestone, really even a deadline toward driving action. So in government, in business, in our neighborhoods, and setting that stage for what comes next. And we want every organization and neighborhood to be able to tell their own sustainability story. So on the business front, we're excited to announce today a partnership with Case's Fowler Center and Aim to Flourish. The goal is to recognize at least 150 businesses in Northeast Ohio around what they're doing to become flourishing, to be more sustainable. So if your organization is interested in being part of that cohort, there's a table on the back as well for that.
Good morning, everyone. All right, it's Friday. I need a little bit more energy than that. I know we've had long weeks, but we're going to finish strong. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, there we go. All right, so we are kicking off day 2 of the summit. Those of you that could join us yesterday, thank you. Those of you that are here today, a very big thank you. This is a big part of the work that we do. Really quickly, I want to introduce 2 students, Kayshawn Pillar and Jade Ensley. They are from Mayor Jackson's Youth Sustainability, or Youth Summer Employment Program, and they worked with our Cleveland Division of Water over the summer. And one of the things that they did was produce a really awesome video. So I'm going to bring them up to introduce that, and then we're going to start the day off with a really great video.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kayshawn Pillar from the Mayor Frank G. Jackson Youth Opportunities Program, and I was in the videography group, and we helped make this project. We edited with a whole bunch of other students from journalism, illegal dumping, and they rapped about stuff they did like in our groups, like cleaning up and how they helped Cleveland with their groups. And me and my mentor, Thomas Stumpf, he was my supervisor. He helped me and him filmed it. We produced it, and he edited, and I edited too. So, yeah.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? My name is Jade Ensley, and I'm very honored to speak at today's event. Vision. That is what this program promotes. Mayor Frank G. Jackson's Summer Youth Employment Program has made me more aware of the environment I live in today. This program does not just give youth a summer job, it gives us an opportunity. This summer, my colleagues and I shot a short music video called Keeping It Green, in which promoted environmental awareness so our peers can adapt sustainable habits. In all, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I loved participating in it. Thank you.
from Cleveland's a blessing, and that's why I'm out here rapping. Sustainability, are you environmentally friendly? Are you saving trees? Do you care about the bees? Underpass me on the court or take a CCP course. Have you seen the land protector? Cause I haven't. You could be a reporter, meet the mayor and enjoy it. Or perhaps work at DOW, maintaining, rearranging, or be in communications, being creative. We just wanna see it clean. If you love your city, then you gotta help it breathe. Showing respect to the LA&D.
Good morning, everybody. Great. It's such a wonderful morning, and I'm so honored and pleased to bring before you a woman who has helped to change my life and how I expand and share my experiences in the outdoors and bring others in to experience it as well on many levels. So today I would like to share with you that Rue Mapp is the founder of Outdoor Afro, which is a social community reconnecting African Americans with natural spaces through outdoor recreational activities. She oversees and carefully selects and trains National Volunteer Leadership Team consisting of 65 men and women who represent 30 cities in the U.S., including yours truly. Through Outdoor Afro, she shares opportunities to build a broader community and leadership in nature. Her important work has generated widespread national attention and support. Originally beginning in 2009 as a blog, she started writing about her love of nature and her experience of being the only Black person at many hiking and camping activities. Something that I've found in the work that I do is basically the same. And as you might imagine, through her stories that she shared, it resonated with a lot of other African Americans who wrote and told her, hey, you know what? That's me, and I'm tired of being the only one too. Rue has since captured the attention and imagination of millions through the multimedia approach that is grounded in personal connections and community organizing. From its grassroots beginning, now Outdoor Afro enjoys national sponsorship and is recognized by major organizations for the importance of the work of diversity in the outdoors. In 2010, Ms. Mapp was invited to the White House under the Obama administration to participate in the America's Great Outdoors Conference, and subsequently she took part in a think tank to inform the launch of former First Lady Michelle Obama's Let's Move initiative. Mapp's work has been featured in publications including the Wall Street Journal, Backpacker Magazine, Ebony Magazine, Sunset Magazine, and many others. Her ongoing work has been recognized with numerous awards and distinctions, including the Route 100 as one of the most influential African Americans in the country, Outdoor Industry Inspirational Award, the 2000 2014 National Wildlife Federation Communications Award, which she happened to receive alongside with former President Bill Clinton. And in May 2015, Family Circle magazine selected Rue as one of America's 20 most influential moms. Rue remains in high demand, as you might imagine, speaking around the country and in Canada about her innovative approach that has successfully connected thousands, especially from the African American community, to nature and the benefits of spending more time outdoors. The work that she has done, and if I may go off script, has again influenced me in the work that I've been doing in the outdoors and creating space for people of color to help to create a narrative of enjoying the outdoors and why people of color get outdoors, and just knowing that the space belongs to all. And I'm forever grateful. So Rue also serves on the board of Rails and Trails Conservancy and the American Camp Association. Most recently, she was appointed to the California State Parks Commission by the Governor Jerry Brown. A graduate of UC Berkeley with a degree in art history, Rue's skills and background make her a unique voice via the community to awesome wonders and benefits of the outdoors. Rue resides in Oakland, California, and is the proud mom of 3 very active teens. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ladies and gentlemen, let me present Rue Mapp.
What an introduction. I'm like, who are they talking about? Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you so much, Sustainable Cleveland. I'm honored to be here. And it was really lovely to land last night just in time for a Browns win. So very excited for this community. Well, let's get right to it. This is just, again, a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. I feel like I am with my tribe, and I get a chance to tell you about all the things that led me to you today. And it started with my family. Like for most of us, we connect with the outdoors and love the outdoors because of a personal connection brought usually on by our family. And this is my family. My parents were from Texas and Louisiana, and they migrated to Oakland, California, like a lot of African Americans did, in search of the warmth of other suns, and also to get away from a Jim Crow South. But what they also brought with them was this love for the outdoors and nature. And so they had this ranch about 100 miles north of Oakland. And at that ranch, it was really like a laboratory for me. I was able to ride my bike along country roads. I was able to monitor the life cycle of a tadpole into a frog. It was really a very special and lovely place and lovely way to grow up. But not only was it a place for me to enjoy nature, it was also a place to enjoy people. And this is a family reunion that we had up at the ranch. And I want you to hold this image in your head, because I'm going to share with you some other images that will evoke this moment. So, you know, one of the things that I loved about my parents was their hospitality. It didn't matter if you had an appointment or scheduled time to meet with them. They were always available, oftentimes with hot food and definitely a place you can stay overnight. And at the ranch, you know, I was able to witness adult wonder in nature and connections to each other, and how restorative that was for people. Another constant of my childhood was writing. These are 2 pages, actually, from the diary of my Hello Kitty journal. And the thing that was really important about my diary was I used it as a way to reflect on my outdoor experiences. And these 2 pages are actually 2 pages that describe my very first time camping with the Girl Scouts. And here's another constant of my childhood. Can anyone identify what this is? Go ahead and date yourself. I heard it over here. Commodore 64. Yeah, so that was my very first home computer. It was actually the home version of the computer that I was working with at my elementary school. And my parents bought this for me as I was moving to middle school as a gift. And it was all coding. You plugged it into your television became your monitor, and it was a fascinating time in technology because people weren't really using computers at home, and I was absolutely able to be at the cutting edge and have comfort using digital media from a really young age. But it wasn't until I was about 20 years old, at the precipice of adulthood, that I decided to go on my first outward bound mountaineering course. Now, I grew up in nature, but we were not mountaineers. And I had this really long and pretty intimidating packing list of things I'd never purchased before. And I'm looking at the list, I'm thinking, why do I need a headlamp when I've got a flashlight? Well, you need your hands to climb. And I learned quickly the night of one of our climbs where we were going to summit for the evening and camp that I was desperately in need of light. And as I climbed up that mountain, I got about halfway up and the light was gone. And all I could do was feel my way. And I was literally starfished on the side of that mountain. And I was panicked because I didn't think I could make it. And at the point where I really felt like giving up, my instructor leaned over and he said, "Rue, trust your feet." And something about those words unlocked something in me, and I scampered to the top. And I'm still trusting my feet. But that was a moment where I realized nature was a powerful teacher. And that was a lesson I needed to learn at the precipice of adulthood, that I could trust what was inside of me to move me forward. And then several years later went by. I married, I had 3 children, and I found that I wanted to go back to school to pursue a business degree. And I had a mentor ask me a question that I think everyone should ask or answer. And that is, Rue, if time and money were not an issue, what is it you would do with yourself? And I opened my mouth and my life fell out. I said, I'd probably start a website to reconnect African Americans to the outdoors. And that surprised me. I think we all have things that we do, hobbies that we pursue, and we really don't think about them in a professional context. But this was an opportunity for me to bring together all the parts of who I was, all the things that I cared about. And just 2 weeks after that conversation, Outdoor Afro was born. And as you heard, it started off just as a blog. I used a Google template, nothing sophisticated. And I just started telling the stories I'm sharing with you about why I love the outdoors. And back in 2009, using social media, the algorithms were pretty flat. We didn't have to pay to play as we do today. So from my kitchen table, I was able to have a conversation about all the things that I loved about the outdoors. But what happened was that people responded to me. They said, hey, I love the outdoors too. And as you heard, my background is in art history, and I figured we probably had a visual representation problem, that people were getting outside. They thought they were the only ones. But with Outdoor Afro, I found that you bring all the only ones together, and we're actually quite numerous. And one other demographic that we typically weren't seeing in the backpacker magazines of the world were African American women between the ages of 25 and 44. And this is a very, very interesting and influential demographic because these are the people who are making decisions for children, for partners, maybe for elder parent. And so this is a woman who doesn't roll by herself. And we were able to have really unique and focused conversations about her experience in the outdoors. And we were very fortunate to have a lot of partners come on board very early in Outdoor Afro's start. And there were a lot of organizations who were thinking about diversity, inclusion, outdoor retailers thinking about their future customer, recognizing that many of their member roles were predominantly white men over 50, and how sustainable would that be over the next 20 years or so as America increasingly is brown. And I also wanted to know, for those who had any reluctance around getting into the outdoors, what were the barriers? So when our sample size got big enough with Outdoor Afro, I polled the group and had some pretty interesting responses. And here are the top ones. Gear and equipment. You know, sometimes if you go in an REI or any other kind of outdoor store, it's very overwhelming. What do you buy? Or what might you already have at home that you don't have to buy? Fears and perceptions of the outdoors was a huge issue. And not only fears about what might crawl on you or bite you, but also fears of other people. Transportation is a huge issue. Sometimes it's so close, but so far away, especially if it's on a weekend and you have limited bus service. And then finally, and this is an image that really evokes stress, we're all overscheduled. We all have so much going on. How do we fit the outdoors in a very impacted life? So what we decided to do as Outdoor Afro was to create outdoor experiences for people. People wanted to go to the next level. They were like, great, we're talking about it, we're sharing our photos about it, let's get outside. And informed by what these challenges are, we created our very first Outdoor Afro leadership team. I went back to social media and I said, hey, who wants to be an Outdoor Afro leader? And I honestly did not know what I was doing, but I had learned a lot from partners like the Sierra Club and REI about getting people outdoors. And I thought we would try to train people who opted in to become leaders in their own community to help people connect with the outdoors, recognizing the diversity within the diversity of the African American community, and that outdoor experiences and opportunities could look different depending on where you are in the country. So this was the first group, and then we grew a little bit, taking time to learn more about what Outdoor Afro leadership team needed to look like. And then we doubled, and then we got bigger and bigger. And I'm proud to say that this year's cohort reached 80 individuals who now represent 30 states, actually. And this was our training. Thank you. We have north of 35,000 people who are a part of the participant network. And I'm so proud to have a network right here in Cleveland, thanks to Kim. And I'd like to actually play a little video at this time, just to show more. The team speaks so well for themselves.
Get y'all to come in. Act like you love each other. Come on now. Oh, that's awesome.
Outdoor Afro is a national nonprofit organization that focuses on creating and fostering opportunities for Black leadership in the outdoors.
This is the Outdoor Afro Leadership Team Training and Summit, and it's a chance for Outdoor Afro leaders from around the country to learn what it takes to be a successful Outdoor Afro leader.
Outdoor Afro is important to me because the outdoor space is transformative.
One of the biggest issues in the outdoors is access and representation and inclusion. And I think a lot of Black people struggle with getting outside and feeling included when we get there.
So at this training, we have lectures on risk management, demonstration hikes, meditation as a way to weave mindfulness.
You have access through these leaders to all of this knowledge, and it really creates a safer space for you to feel like, I do belong in the outdoors. And yes, we do. One of the most important things that we focus on in Outdoor Afro is creating a sense of community. And it's not even a sense of community. You actually have that. You're a part of that. And I knew it when I left the leadership training, and I wanted to share that and bring that back to New Mexico. Zion's like, let's get all the way on the edge. Oh, God. You get to know new people, and by the end, when you close it, you feel like you've known them forever, and you want to see them again. You want to go outside and play. Like, that's Outdoor Afro.
You say Afro, outdoor, Afro, outdoor, Afro. You say outdoor, you say Afro.
I find so much power in being a leader, and it just instills so much confidence. But at the same time, it's okay to be vulnerable in our communities and just kind of sharing our struggles, but growing together too. And it doesn't stop at the outdoors. It's so much more than that.
Outdoor Afro has become, for so many people, that place where you feel nurtured and affirmed, and you get to be all the parts of who you are. Because we all need connection, and that's what Outdoor Afro is. It lets people know that they're all right, and specifically, they're all right in nature.
Thank you. Very inspirational. They motivate me to pop up every day and get on planes to places like this. They're just phenomenal. But I need the medicine myself, right? And so I, back in 2014, decided to go visit that capital W wilderness again. And this is me and my group, made up of mostly members of the Sierra Club, Mike Broom there in the center, who's the executive director. And we're in the Molly Beatty Wilderness, and behind us is the Brooks Range. And we had just landed in Alaska to find this creature waiting for us. We literally just landed the plane, and this bear was huge, was scary. And we did what humans tend to do with charismatic megafauna. We tried to reason with the bear. Go away, bear. You don't want to be here, bear. And just as quickly as the bear appeared, it took a whiff of northern air and disappeared into the landscape. And my knees, I remember they were just shaking. And it was a moment of clarity for me, because I realized we were in that bear's wild. We oftentimes, give ourselves so much credit for having influence over the wild and in nature. But I knew that had that bear enjoyed us for takeout that day, that wild in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge would continue to lumber on as though its human inhabitants were never there. And it reset my humanity. I realized I was not at the top of the food chain, and I know I'm better for that. And then I came home to Oakland, and I wondered, there are people who will never go to the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. How can we make connections between those wild places and the wild that exists in our urban areas? And I also, at the time, thought a lot about the ways that we have people in our communities who've always been there carrying the torch for nature and outdoor engagement. I think about people like Harriet Tubman, who is absolutely a wilderness leader. She led people in the cover of night, using the stars to guide her to help people get free. And we have many other examples right in our own families, but we also have a narrative of disconnection as well that we have to confront. We can turn to the plaintive lyrics of Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit, that tells the story of terror that has been inflicted on Black bodies in the cover of night and in nature. But today, we have a chance to tell a new narrative, and we understand and have compassion for why people may not be connecting to the outdoors and why they may need to connect to the outdoors in groups. A couple years ago, we also were facing a lot of public trauma, police-involved violence against Black bodies in the outdoors. And in Oakland, like in many cities around the country, people took to the streets to protest. And I was leaving my office one day, and I'm asking myself, as I could hear my town preparing for rioting, what was it that Outdoor Afro needed to do? What was I called to do in this moment? And the answer came to me. It was, Rue, you do nature. That's your lane. So that same week, I organized Outdoor Afro leaders and some of our partners and invited them to take to nature for healing hikes. And in Oakland in particular, we went to the redwoods. Redwoods are they're stunning, the coast redwoods in California. And we went down into the bowl of the redwoods and hiked along the stream trail. And I could feel the stress just falling off of people. We were not in the hard landscapes with police and riot gear and helicopters overhead. And people were able to hear each other and share, even, though people didn't all agree, it was a place that felt safe for people. And I realized that we were doing what African Americans have always known we could do, and that was to lay down our burdens down by the riverside. And that was a moment of reflection in the work that helped me to understand nature as a powerful healer. And we've been continuing healing hikes. There are lots of personal and national reasons to take to nature, to find that balm to help us be able to sustain ourselves in our day-to-day lives. So I'm just going to run through several examples of what Outdoor Afro experiences look like and the community that's formed as a result of these amazing leaders. And this is a favorite. This is Chicago, where you've got kayaks in the front and skyscrapers in the back. We really emphasize people getting connected to nature close to home. We're also helping people learn how to swim. Because of policies and segregation and lack of access, we have a crisis of African Americans who disproportionately do not know how to swim, which also means that the rate of drownings is much higher in the African American community. So Outdoor Afro is doing something about that. We also are just so grateful that people trust us with experiences that they may not pursue on their own, like whitewater rafting and camping. And we also are helping parents learn how to hike with their children. So we actually do Hike 101s with toddlers and caregivers. And we take close looks. It's not just about traipsing through, but noticing wildlife and understanding our role and our position in their habitats. And this is another favorite of mine. This guy is probably about 35 years old, and he's holding a banana slug. Look at that face. It's like he's 4 years old again. And it's a reminder, and it brings me back to my time on the ranch, that adults need nature and wonder as well. And this is the face of Barbara and her daughter Jalea, who are experiencing play in the snow for the very first time. And we also, as a part of the leadership team, pursue peak experiences. And so a part of the group one year decided to summit Mount Whitney, the highest elevation in the lower 48. The following year, we had a group who decided to do 40 miles on the Appalachian Trail to explore the path of the Underground Railroad. And in a really proud moment this year, these folks in front of you, they went to Mount Kilimanjaro and were successful, each of them, in their summit attempts. And then conservation action is something that we also promote. One of the things that is important to us is that people develop a relationship with the outdoors in advance of the conservation activities that we sometimes hope that people will take on. When I see children, for instance, who are out at a beach cleaning up or picking up trash in a nature area, my first question is, have they ever played here? So it's important to us that we are connecting people with nature across the spectrum of engagement and really helping them to find joy that we hope will translate into their actual stewardship for the land. And sometimes it's about getting together and just sharing our stories with each other, as humans have done through time immemorial. So we've learned a few things, and I'm still learning throughout the experience of Outdoor Afro. we've learned that relevance is everything. We have listened to the community from the very beginning, and we have pivoted, we've responded in ways that are meaningful to people's everyday lives. Leadership, that has definitely been the secret sauce. In the beginning, it was about visual representation, then it was about participation, getting more people outside. But now we have leaders who are pursuing some amazing professional pathways that wouldn't otherwise have been known or available to them if they hadn't been outdoor Afro leaders. And so we're really pleased by the way that we're helping people to come to the table, to join boards and other roles of influence in the outdoor related fields. And then finally, this work is about the long view. We sometimes get a lot of pressure, with grants to perform on certain metrics within a year. But we know that change is generational. And I even ask myself from time to time, like, what does success look like? What will it look like when my work is done? And I think it's going to be a very quiet moment. It's going to be that moment when you'll be outside and you'll see people engage with the outdoors in proportion to their population and their opportunity. And it won't be any big deal. Thank you.
We have just a couple great speakers coming up we're really excited about, and both honestly kind of fell in our laps, so we feel very, very fortunate about that. I am going to introduce the introducer of those speakers, and his name is Grant Goodrich, a really great partner of ours. Grant is a nonprofit organization leader with a passion for the environments and public service and for making Northeast Ohio a great place to live, work, and raise a family. He's a dedicated veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps with a deployment to Iraq. Grant served for 14 years as an infantry officer and foreign affairs specialist. Grant is currently the director of the Great Lakes Energy Institute at Case Western Reserve University, where he works to grow the energy-related research efforts of the university. Previously, Grant led efforts to attract and grow businesses in Greater Cleveland while serving as the interim CEO of Team NEO. And earlier, he managed the international research projects of the Earth Institute at Columbia University, my alma mater as well. Earlier this year, Grant was a Democratic candidate for Congress for Ohio's 16th district, and he is a devoted husband and father, lives in Cleveland, and owns a 56-acre farm in Medina, so he's going to invite us all there for a big party at some point. Grant, without further ado.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to Cleveland's 10th Annual Sustainability Summit. Again, my name is Grant Goodrich. I'm the director of the Great Lakes Energy Institute at Case Western Reserve University. From research on new chemistries to make more powerful and longer-lasting batteries, to improving the lifetime and performance of solar panels, to analyzing the foundation of Great Lakes-based offshore wind turbines, our faculty and researchers at Case Western Reserve are working to solve some of the most pressing energy challenges facing our world. Energy, and specifically the release of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere through the use of fossil fuels, is largely responsible for the challenges of a changing climate facing humanity. New technologies that reduce or eliminate these emissions are urgently needed to curb the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, and Case Western Reserve plays an important role at the local and national level in these efforts. While much of our summit so far has been a discussion of vibrant neighborhoods and the sustainability of our greater Cleveland community, our next speakers will help us consider the issues of sustainability and climate change at the national level. While it is important that we as a community are becoming more sustainable, the national implications are also incredibly important. For instance, consider that 2 weeks ago, the Marines of the 2nd Marine Division and the soldiers of the 18th Airborne Corps, both based in North Carolina, were busy filling sandbags in anticipation of the arrival of Hurricane Florence. With a national security strategy that calls for readiness and lethality of the military, 2 of our most rapidly deployable units were weathering the brunt of a once-in-500-year storm and were not available for deployment. To address the topic of climate and national security, I'd like to introduce Brigadier General Stephen Cheney, CEO of the American Security Project. General Cheney is a fellow Marine, also a U.S. Naval Academy graduate. The American Security Project is a nonpartisan organization created to educate the American public and the world about the changing nature of national security in the 21st century. The American Security Project strives to forge a bipartisan consensus on a new national security strategy that will restore America's leadership and ensure our security, as well as to raise the American public's understanding of critical national security issues through direct engagement and dialogue. Through his 30-year career as a Marine Corps officer, General Cheney focused extensively on entry-level training, commanding at every echelon at both the Marine Corps recruit depots, to include being the commanding general of Parris Island, South Carolina. General Cheney, in addition to being a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, is a graduate of Marine Corps Command and Staff College, the National War College, the University of Southern California. He was a military fellow on the Council of Foreign Relations in New York City, where he is a member. He was also a member of the Secretary of State's International Security Advisory Board, the Department of State's Foreign Affairs Policy Board, and he was the Inspector General of the Marine Corps. Without further ado, please give a warm Cleveland welcome to Brigadier General Stephen Cheney.
I guess I ought to open up with Dilly Dilly. I gave a presentation yesterday at Akron. WKSU is there and they taped it. And I gave a pitch for them, and I'll give a pitch for them today, too. They're on their annual campaign. It's NPR Radio. And what I do whenever I check in a hotel, the first thing I do is I go to the alarm clock. I make sure it's not set for 4:30 a.m., and I turn it to the local NPR station, which happened to be WKSU. So this story gets better. I get up this morning and turn it on, and it says, "Can you believe the great win last night?" And I go, they weren't watching the same game that I was watching, were they? Because I went to bed at about 10:15 and it wasn't looking good. So congratulations to Cleveland. The Browns did it. Grant, that was a great introduction, entirely too long, I'm sorry. I wish my mother was here because she's the only one who would really believe it. I indeed was the Inspector General of the Marine Corps, and you may be familiar with the jobs of an Inspector General. What I used to do is show up on somebody's doorstep and say, "I'm the Inspector General, I'm here to help you." And the door would immediately slam in your face. I am here to help you here today and pass on a message, and it relates obviously to the American Security Project. We are a 501c3 nonprofit founded in 2004-2005 timeframe, shortly after the presidential election. And you may be familiar with that election because a man named Kerry ran and lost. And one of the topics that he covered extensively during the campaign was climate change. And I say, and he's not fond of this, but he pretty much got painted as the left-wing liberal that he was. And so his message of climate change did not resonate or get through. And he thought, is there somebody I can tag or some other person who can be the spokesman for this issue, who can talk the national security perspective of climate change and let the general population figure out that indeed your future is in trouble? So his conception was to get 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And Senator Bennett, I'm so glad that you're here today. I know you're a big supporter and fan, and I'm just delighted and thrilled that you're going to follow me. 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, just happened to be Hagel, Kerry, Hart, and Rudman. And they said, hey, if we do the pitching here, it'll get painted as political and partisan. So let's grab 8 what we call flag officers. These are generals and admirals, 3- and 4-star, 2 from each service, recently retired, and we'll use them to do the talking. And we won't talk Republican or Democrat. We'll talk national security and the impact that it's going to have on our country and in the world. And that's exactly what he did. And so they put that group together. We had some very notorious folks, Admiral Fallon, General Zinni, Claudia Kennedy, General Lyles, just to name a few, most of them still on our board today. And I got tagged a couple years later because General Zinni got elected to be the head of a defense contractor, and I took his place. And I've been with the organization ever since. Now, this topic, and I'm trying to condense what's an hour-long speech into 10 minutes, so bear with me here. But I want to impress upon you how dire it really is. And I'm not a chicken little guy. You're not going to die tomorrow. We had an editors roundtable this morning, and in the conversation there, most of us around the table said in 10 years, the impact of climate change on us personally is not going to be tremendously significant, although it will be in some instances. But in 40 or 50 years, or upon the students at the University of Akron that I talked to yesterday, it will be very dramatic to them. So I'm just going to break it down into two sections. I call it strategic and tactical, and I'll try to give 3 minutes to each. On the strategic side of the house, the Department of Defense, of course, has to plan for conflict worldwide. So when you have your combatant commanders, and these are the men and women that are tasked to look at their region and figure out what the threats are, they've got to consider the threats out not just 5 years or 10 years, but 40, 50, or 60. And you'd say, why would they have to look that far out? Well, when you buy an aircraft carrier, it takes about a dozen years just to construct it, and then it lasts another 50. So they got to be thinking that far in advance. And what's the threat going to be 40 or 50 years out? So when you look at somebody like Admiral Locklear at the Pacific Command, who in 2013 had just gone through Typhoon Haiyan. Haiyan had the highest recorded wind in any hurricane or typhoon in history, killed 8,000 people. We sent 12,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines to the Philippines to rescue them. And you might say, well, why did we do that? Well, certainly it was out of the goodness of our heart. But really, we were the only ones who could ever do that. Moving that many people, that amount of distance with those logistics, nobody else can do that. Ironically, of course, what do we have in the last 2 weeks? Another typhoon in the Philippines. Fortunately, not near as damaging. And I'm not here to say that climate change is the main cause of all these catastrophic weather events, but it certainly is a major contributor. And what you are seeing in the trend, certainly over the last 3 years, when you look back at Harvey, Maria, and Irma, and now last week, Florence, you can see this is occurring on a routine, regular basis. Now it's become a natural thing each year that we're going to have a significant hurricane, just like Florence was in North Carolina. And I mentioned Florence in North Carolina because my personal experience goes back to Parris Island in 1999 when Hurricane Floyd, Category 5, took dead aim at Parris Island. Parris Island's an island. We thought, uh-oh, going underwater, got to evacuate. 10,000 recruits and drill instructors sitting on an island. Had to move them 250 miles, which we did do. Fortunately, Floyd didn't hit us bad, but it hit North Carolina. And they had over 60 people killed. They had $10 billion worth of damage, cut Route 95 for 2 weeks, almost identical to what Florence did last week. And this is now becoming a routine thing. And as Grant said, right now we have 13,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines responding to Hurricane Florence. So it's a joint operation. The Defense Department really wasn't built to be catastrophic event response. It was built to defend the country. And but one example, Grant, is that we have a battalion sitting at Camp Lejeune that's supposed to be in Norway today, relieving the battalion that's up there, but they're not going because they're in North Carolina helping save lives, which is appropriate and good. But my point to this is going to happen more and more often. So that's kind of on the tactical side. I also might mention that our bases and stations on the coast are going underwater. Norfolk Station is the largest naval base in the world. It's going underwater for two reasons. The land is sinking and the water is rising. It's a fact. They've already had to raise the piers there. Now, I talk 10, 40, 50 years out. In 10 years, certainly they're going to have to raise all the piers. In 40 years, they're going to have to move that base. They've got to be thinking about somewhere along the line. So the security is threatened there. Lastly, I'll walk around the world for a minute and talk about climate change and the impact on conflict. Go ahead and Google Lake Chad. You look at Lake Chad in the maps when it pops on Google. 50 years ago, it was a large-sized lake. 90% of its water is gone today. There were about 20 million people who subsisted on that water. They had to move, and they moved all over Africa. And the example I use when I go to Europe is they think they had a migration problem because of Syrian conflict in the Middle East. Wait till you see what happens over the next 10 years when the heat increases to 150 degrees Fahrenheit in sub-Saharan Africa, and they all move north and go across the Mediterranean headed to Europe. That is going to be a huge problem. And it also was a big contributor to the Mali insurgency when the Tuaregs lost all their crops. Same thing happened in Syria. 2007, 2011, the biggest drought in their history. All the farmers had to move. They lost their wherewithal. They lost their food. A lot of them moved to a town where I think Senator Bennett and I won't know where it is, Aleppo, and became an instant target for Assad and ISIS, a huge recruitment target for ISIS. So it wasn't the cause of Arab Spring or the cause of the conflict in Syria, but it was certainly a huge contributor. And lastly, I'll walk around over to Bangladesh, and you would think, what does Bangladesh mean to me? 1 meter rise in sea level, they have 30 million climate refugees. And you say, how can that be? Well, because 30% of their territory is a meter less above sea level. Now, the sad part about this is it's already cooked into the formula. They know that it's going to rise a meter in 10 years, and we cannot stop it today. What we, of course, need to do is stop it in 20, 30, or 40 years so that it doesn't go 2 or 3 or 4 meters higher, and then you have 100 million refugees. Now, the sad part about this one is they have nowhere to go. They're not going to India. There's an armed border very similar to the Berlin Wall. They're not going to Myanmar. You're familiar with the Rohingya crisis. So are they going to climb onto boats and go to Indonesia, which, by the way, is the largest Muslim country in the world, has a significant ISIS footprint? So Admiral Locklear, back in the day, was looking at that thinking, I am going to have a migration crisis in the Pacific Command that's going to overwhelm what he's capable of countering. And you can see how that works. Now, to cut to the chase, you go, why am I passing this message to you? You need to be concerned about it. And we know what causes climate change. It's a simple formula. It's called CO2. And we're pumping it in the atmosphere at rates that are just unbelievable. I was reminded last night at the University of Akron that now the transportation sector has overtaken the energy sector as the #1 polluter in the United States on CO2. And you'd think, how could that be? That's because natural gas has now overtaken coal as a provider for energy in the country, which is actually a good thing, because natural gas burns much cleaner than coal does. And this resurrection of coal just actually sickens me, because it's not true. There is no such thing as clean coal. It's just not going to happen. And actually, natural gas isn't that clean either, but it's better than coal. So my point to this is we need to eventually get to renewables. Guess what the #2 state use of solar power in this country is? Now, you're probably thinking Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado, California, North Carolina. North Carolina. And why would that be? Well, they don't have a huge deposit of coal or natural gas. They've got some nuclear power plants, but those are mostly going to close eventually. So the thought was, let's go to renewables, and they're doing it at an incredibly fast rate. And that's what you ought to be doing here in Ohio. You ought to be thinking about going to renewables, helping them out, doing wind and solar. All that technology is going to improve and get better, and it can do nothing but improve our environment and reduce CO2 in the world. So that's really the message that I want to pass on to everybody here. And I often get asked, hey, look to your elected officials. Look to those who might understand this issue. This is going to impact certainly just about everybody here, but your kids, your grandkids. It's going to get warmer here in Ohio. You're going to see more algae blooms. You're going to see more floods, more deforestation. Fortunately, you're not on the coast where sea level rise is going to kill you, but there will be more catastrophic weather. You're going to have hotter years, hotter months. I heard this morning, I believe, that you've had more 90-degree days in September than you've ever had this year. That's just going to keep coming. And if we don't do something to stop it, you're going to eventually pay the price. So I realize that's kind of a sad message at the end. I always tell folks, like King Henry VIII told many of his wives, I wasn't going to keep you very long. So I stuck to my 10-minute limit, and I appreciate what you're doing here with sustainability, what Cleveland's doing. It's great work. Grant, your organization is doing great work as well. So with that, I'm going to bring Grant back up. Thank you very much.
So General Cheney has a few minutes for Q&A. If there's questions from the audience, we'll be happy to take them before he has to run out. And we do have some folks with microphones around the sides. Any questions?
Hi, my name's Beth. I actually live in Akron. Are you still there right now, and would you like to meet with any local politicians and tell them what you just told this room full of wonderful people?
Well, I spent all day yesterday in Akron. We did an editors roundtable, went to the university, had a big luncheon with 400 folks plus. Did not have the mayor, unfortunately, and also, unfortunately, I'm going back to D.C. this afternoon. I did not, you give me a great opening to say, I'm so pleased to be outside the Beltway and be here with the people where the rubber meets the road, because it's just madhouse inside the Beltway. And issues like this get shoved under the mat pretty easily given the topic du jour, which you're all familiar with. So I would love to come back to Akron and talk to your officials. Our website is americansecurityproject.org. My email is scheny@americansecurityproject.org. Hit me up, and I'd love to come back. Thanks, Beth. That's a great question. I've stunned you into silence. Okay, we got one right here.
Hello. You talked about climate migration and religious issues that go hand in hand with that or are involved in that. Can you talk about more, is anything being done to discuss those things for the future when those migration movements patterns need to happen, and how it could be a conflict and how people are working to solve that conflict now before it happens?
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from. Climate change is apolitical. It doesn't care what religion you are. It's going to pick on everybody simultaneously. Unfortunately, given where it's happening most, impacts varying religions. The Middle East is perhaps going to feel a significant impact on this. And whether it's the Muslim community or the Christian community, to me, it really, like in Syria, it didn't make any difference. They were all headed to Aleppo, and I presume most of them were Muslim, but I don't know. Same thing in Bangladesh. Bangladesh has a unique problem with the Rohingyas now and going. So I don't want to get it into put it in a secular context, because I don't think it's apropos, because everybody's going to be equally affected by it. Now, governments, of course, are going to react in different ways. We ASP go all over the world talking this issue. I just got back from Sweden here a month ago. We just got back from Qatar here a couple of weeks ago, talking this issue and others. Because we cover a number of other issues, by the way. Climate change is not the only one. Nuclear proliferation is one that we're very interested in, and of course Iran is high on that list, and pulling out of the JCPOA, which was a big mistake. And when I go back to climate, pulling out of the Paris Accord was a disaster. And here's where the states and cities come in. Because now we have states and mayors that are coming back and saying, we don't care what the federal government did. We are going to adhere to the precepts of the Paris Accord, which to me is the right way to go. Okay, Mr. President, if you want to set that policy for your government, but we got a state government here, and we can set our own policies, which I'd love to see. Of course, let's get back into the Paris Accord. I think pulling out was terrible, but I don't want to put a religious slant on it necessarily, because I think it affects us all the same.
Time for one more question.
So, what does HAARP play? What part does HAARP play? HAARP. In the government spectrum and in the idea of climate change?
Describe HAARP to me.
It's supposed to be a system that the government has to utilize the weather and change the weather.
I am not familiar with HAARP. I hate to express my ignorance here.
Okay.
But I'm not up to speed on HAARP. Let's take one more here, all the way in the back.
I was wondering if you could speak to the sustainability of natural gas compared to coal, given that while it does burn much cleaner, it leaks quite a bit of methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas in and of itself. And a recent study by 19 co-authors, several at Stanford University, this year suggests that methane emissions are about 60% higher than the official EPA estimates.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure everybody heard about methane and natural gas. And you heard my comments about natural gas being much cleaner than coal. I didn't say it was risk-free. I mean, anytime you have a pipeline, my opinion is sooner or later they're going to leak somewhere. And you've seen that nationwide, certainly even with Keystone, for instance. I just think natural gas is much cleaner and better than oil is. Eventually, you need to get off it. Now, I haven't heard of any leaking from a windmill or a solar panel, so I think they're pretty safe. I mentioned that I got back from Sweden in June, and it's interesting when you talk to the Europeans, because I won't say they look down on us, but they look at us and go, you don't get it. When they pull up to a gas pump and they're paying $10 or $12 for a gallon of gas, and we're paying, what, $2.50 or $3? And now we're selling trucks at the rapid rate and burning this stuff, and which, by the way, the administration just now decides it's not going to adhere to the CAFE standards and reduce them back the way they were, which is exactly the wrong way to go. So on the natural gas side, methane is a huge problem. You ought to see the methane problem that's going on in the Arctic with the melting of the permafrost, which, by the way, that's kind of cooked in too, which is causing a huge problem. Methane is much more toxic, and the way to reduce it, of course, is don't pump natural gas or pump oil either. So it doesn't totally answer your question, but it's not natural gas is not risk-free. I was approached by a senator from West Virginia, you can imagine, and he wanted to create a huge repository for natural gas in that state. And I thought, and asked me what my opinion was. I said, well, I guess that's better than having oil, and it's better than burning coal. But long term, I'd rather do something else like renewables. So great comment on it, and you're totally right. With that, I'll say thank you very much.
As the general walks off the stage, can we get one more round of applause for Brigadier General Stephen Cheney and the American Security Project? Often it's difficult to connect local and national. A lot of our activities, our work here in this room on vibrant neighborhoods and our Sustainable 2019 plan for the city of Cleveland, our work over the last year with our climate action plan, and the work that many of you in the room have done as advisors on the City of Cleveland's Climate Action Advisory Council. A lot of that, sometimes it feels difficult to make that connection with what's going on at the national level and what the bigger picture is. So I think it was great that Brigadier General Cheney was able to share some of that with us today and think about some of the challenges we're facing at a bigger level. But our next speaker is also going to help us think about how work that's local or work at the state level is so incredibly important, and why some of that work isn't necessarily understood or rewarded in Washington, D.C. It's my pleasure to welcome next to the stage Senator Michael Bennet, U.S. Senator from Colorado. He's represented the state of Colorado in the United States Senate since 2009. Recognized as a pragmatic and independent thinker, he is driven by an obligation to create more opportunity for the next generation. Michael has built a reputation of taking on Washington dysfunction and working with Republicans and Democrats to address our nation's greatest challenges, including education, climate change, immigration, health care, and national security. Before serving in the Senate, Michael worked to restructure failing businesses and helped create the world's largest movie theater chain. As superintendent of the Denver Public Schools, he led one of the most extensive reform efforts in the country, resulting in substantial sustained academic improvement for Denver's children. He lives in Denver with his wife and 3 daughters. Cleveland, let's give a warm Ohio welcome to Senator Bennet from Colorado.
Well, hello everybody. Let's give the General a round of applause again for his great comments. And Grant, thank you for that kind introduction. I want to start by saying that I've been to exactly one Browns game in my life, and it was last night. So I'm not sure there's a connection, but it was fun to be there. It was really fun to be there. And it's fun to be back in Ohio. I was here 30 years ago working for a guy named Dick Celeste, who was your governor. Some of you may remember him. We spent a lot of time going back and forth to Cleveland, but also traveling to Akron and to Toledo and to Cincinnati and to Dayton, all over the state of Ohio. And I haven't spent a lot of time here since then. So, and let me say also, I'll give you Governor Celeste regards, because he is now my constituent. He lives in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I want to celebrate what you guys are doing here, having been a local person before I was in the Senate working for the city and county of Denver, and then for the children in the Denver Public Schools. I know how important what you're doing is, and the importance of the climate action plan that you launched in 2013, and in particular your commitment to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement even after the United States of America had pulled out of it. Your working to enhance the Emerald Necklace, creating contiguous public parks in your community, which I know is such an important part of having a sustainable city and a thriving community, working to maintain Lake Erie as an asset, fighting a zebra mussel infestation that started when I was here 30 years ago. Cleveland Land Bank working to reclaim and reuse and rebuild the city's diverse neighborhoods. You are indeed a green city on a blue lake, known for thriving outdoor recreation, which when I was here before would have seemed impossible. And yet it's been achieved by your work and the work of people that came before you. I want you to know we are trying to do some of the same kinds of things in Colorado. Last month, our state approved the Colorado Energy Plan, which will allow Xcel Energy, our largest utility, to cut carbon emissions 60%, increase renewables to 55% of its energy mix by 2026, and save customers $213 million while it does it. That's over 2005 numbers. So we are fast eclipsing, in fact, eclipsing the requirements of the Clean Power Plan and of the Paris Agreement, and we're doing it and saving money for people that are buying their electricity in Colorado. Earlier this summer, we joined California's decision to adopt low-emission vehicle standards by 2025, and I heard the discussion on natural gas earlier. We were the first state to lead the nation to limit methane emissions and to regulate that in the production of natural gas. So what I wanted to talk to you about very briefly, and then I'm going to open up, I'm happy to take questions or criticisms on any topic, this topic or any other topic. I'm not going to carry every single burden from Washington, D.C., although I'll agree with the General that it's absolutely delightful to not be there today. But look, I represent a state that is a third Republican, a third Democratic, and a third Independent. It is a swing state. It is a purple state. And the vast majority of people in my state believe that climate change is real. That's what they say. And they say that humankind is contributing to it, and they say we should do something about it. They even said for a long time that they were willing to pay more for their energy if they knew it was coming from renewable sources. As I just told you, because of the cost reduction of solar and wind and now even storage, our largest utility is able to deliver electricity to their customers at a lower price than it would be if they were running the coal plants that we've relied on historically. So why is it that you're able to do this work, people in Colorado are able to do their work, but Washington, D.C. can't seem to understand this is an issue we should be addressing? And I believe the answer to that lies in the way our campaign finance system works, and in particular in a very egregious decision made by the Supreme Court in 2010 called Citizens United. Because until that case, we had both parties saying this was a priority, that we had to work on it as a priority. And the court made a decision where they said that basically the only corruption that they would recognize would be something called quid pro quo corruption, where the general gives me $5,000 and I go write a bill for the general. And which is, he might be thinking, that seems pretty cheap, but he worked at the Pentagon. But that's what they imagined. They also said that the appearance of that kind of corruption could also create an opportunity for people to lose faith in the democracy. And therefore, it's appropriate for us to limit direct contributions to senators. But what we are going to allow is unlimited independent expenditures by others, because since they're, quote, independent, the public won't lose faith in our democracy. I don't know about Ohio, but in Colorado, the view of people there is the last thing we need in our democracy is more money. And they understand quite well that these so-called independent expenditures are anything but that. But a much more important point than that, and this is what I want to leave you with because I think I owe you this candor, is that the Supreme Court missed the corruption in the system. It's not a quid pro quo corruption, a corruption of action, it's a corruption of inaction. It's a corruption that says we're not going to talk about climate. We're not going to have a hearing to talk about CO2 emissions. We're not going to figure out how to put us back into the Paris Climate agreement, because if we do, people with very specific economic interests in this country of ours are entitled to write basically endless checks to control our politics. And that's what's happening. And at this point, they don't even need to write the checks. All they have to do is threaten to write the checks. And that is what has stopped us as a country. That is the reason why we are the only country on the face of the earth that is not part of the global climate agreement. It used to be us and Syria. Now Syria is a member. They found time somehow to sign on to the global climate agreement. But we haven't done it. I mention this for two reasons, and I will stop. One is it's a recognition of how vital your work is, because in the meantime, it's the work at the local level and it's the work at the state level. It's the work of inventors all across the United States of America, I think, that are going to provoke this 21st century energy revolution, allow the United States of America to be the leader of that revolution, which for our strategic geopolitical interests, I think is enormously important. But second, it's why we all need to fight for a politics that's actually responsive to the people who live in our communities and who don't necessarily think of themselves that much as Republicans, Democrats, and independents, but actually would like to leave something for our children and our grandchildren, who would actually like to fulfill the legacy of our parents and our grandparents and leave our kids and grandkids better off than we were. And I think that is very much at stake in our country right now. I think it's very much at stake in our politics right now. And whether we are Democrats or Republicans or none of the above, I think we need to work to overcome it. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to address this issue as the national priority that it is. So thanks for having me here today. I appreciate it very much. And I'd be happy to take some questions if anybody has them or criticisms on any topic. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Senator. Colorado has one of the most aggressive tax breaks for electric vehicles. We currently do not have an electric vehicle tax credit in Ohio. Just wondering if you could explain a little bit about how Colorado got to that point and maybe some words of encouragement for us in Ohio.
I think that people see, well, I'm not going to come here and say what you should do in Ohio, but I do think that the potential that exists for electric vehicles to be part of a much more nimble and responsive grid, to be able to provide storage, as we think about the need for storage, makes it really an exciting opportunity. I think that's why in Colorado we've sort of launched into it. We're not quite obviously where California is, but we're really excited by the possibility and interested in it. The general mentioned the fuel economy standards. It was really frustrating to see those go away because their absence is not going to make the auto industry in America more competitive for obvious reasons. I mean, the world is moving to higher efficiency vehicles. The world is moving to electric vehicles. And we can decide whether we want to lead or be laggards in that race. And Colorado has no interest in being a laggard there. So that's why we're interested in it.
Hi, Senator. Thanks for joining us today. I'm wondering, in the Rocky Mountain region, Colorado, Wyoming, there's a lot of coal production, from what I've heard. Congratulations on the commendable work you guys have been doing over there in renewable energy. I'm wondering how that worked with the large coal industry there. Was there a lot of pushback from people saying they were going to lose coal jobs? Because that is something that it seems like we're focused on here in Ohio, Pennsylvania area.
Great question. I think it's such an important point. People want cheap, resilient, predictable energy. That's what they want. That's what customers want. And over time in my region, that has meant more renewables, not less renewables. It's meant more storage, not less storage. And it's meant that coal plants have become obsolescent more quickly than anybody had planned that they would. Those are economics. That is not Bolshevik engineering of our economy. That is a market economy at work. as that market economy changes, I think it is really, and by the way, it's important to note, as the general also said, that a lot of this transition has happened because of the relative cheapness of natural gas. That's been a component as well. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, you know, if you're not capturing the fugitive methane, it's as dirty as coal. If you do capture it, and there's more work for us to do there, it can burn cleaner than coal. But that has really been the cause of the displacement more than the overbearing regulation of the EPA. That's an issue that I hear about a lot at home, and we talk about a lot at home. I think it's incredibly important for this country to recognize that there will be communities that are affected negatively by this transition of energy, and that we have to attend to that dislocation. It is hard to replace $100,000 coal mining jobs, but it is possible to encourage investment in coal mining communities that wasn't being made historically, to try to diversify the economy. Actually, if you care to look at it, I have a coal communities bill on my website that does that. It takes a whole series of tax incentives and other incentives that have existed and been used in other contexts and uses it to try to address dislocation in coal country. I am the first to say it doesn't solve the problem. We need to do even more than that. It's not their fault that we find ourselves changing the economy that we have. And they have made a long, over decades, a real contribution to our country's history, our economy, our ability to fight the wars the general was talking about. And if we had a rational political system, if we had a rational democracy, we'd be figuring out how to achieve all of this together, because it makes sense that you would achieve it together. Just like it makes sense that as we think about our trade policy, we consider regions in the country that are being negatively affected as other regions in the country are being positively affected. That shouldn't lead you to decide we're not going to have any trade. It should lead you to decide you're going to manage it in a way that's actually going to be more constructive for the country. All of this requires a person to be able to hold at least two thoughts in their head at the same time. And maybe sometimes 4 or 5 thoughts in the same time. And it's not something that's easily done between the commercial breaks on the cable television at night. And it also requires us to accept the idea that we are going to have disagreements in a democratic republic. The founders set it up that way. And what they hoped for us was that out of our disagreements, we would actually create more imaginative and more durable solutions than one person would, a king or a tyrant. And I think today we're falling down on that expectation. I think we have to recover it if we're going to be able to move the ball forward as we have in Colorado, and also achieve a political consensus that this is the right direction for the country to head. I'm not yeah.
Thank you very much for your time today, Senator.
Thanks.
My question today to you is, how do you think we can engage this sustainable mindset and action into college students and high school students nationwide?
Well, you're in a lot better position to tell me that than I am to tell you that. There are many, many ways in which I think college students and people of the generation of college students are getting short shrift from my generation. You know, for our entire history, Americans have left, more, as I mentioned, more opportunity, not less, to the people coming after us. My generation is at risk of being the first generation not to meet that standard. And all of us in this room, no matter what generation we're in, should feel like that's unacceptable, because that's who we are. That's in theory, not in theory, in practice, who we have been as Americans. So I think our first order of business on these issues is to engage your generation, to be able to, everybody, I mean, your age, people know the nature of this threat. You know, there is a consensus among your generation, and I would say people younger than you are, that your elders should be dealing with it. And my basic point to you would be that together we have to figure out how to get people of your generation to vote on this issue, and that would make a huge difference. Is there a non-male questioner out in the audience?
Is there a difference between the public and private views on climate change in the Senate?
Is there a difference between public and private views on climate change in the Senate? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been working with colleagues on both sides of the aisle to see whether or not there's a way to develop a set of bipartisan principles that we can use when the fever breaks and we actually can work together to try to move us forward. Where you find people on the other side of the aisle from me, and I'm making no assumptions about anybody's political affiliation in this crowd, when you find people who are leading on climate, you need to call them up and say thank you for doing that. You need to let people know you've noticed it. So there's a congressman in Florida who very recently put a bill in on climate. He recognizes the issue is real because the seas are rising off the coast of Florida, and he sees the danger that presents. And he's speaking up for his constituents, mixed Democrats and Republicans, when there are people fighting or trying to help people fight their way through the hurricane in North Carolina who are still, when official Washington is still saying this is not climate related. And he's standing up as a Republican saying, hold on a second, no, it is climate related, we need to deal with it. I would say search those people out and give them some support and let them know you know they're there, because it's not easy to do at the federal level. It is at the local level, because you have these conversations at the grocery store, and if people say stuff that has nothing to do with science, they tend to get run out of the grocery store pretty quickly. For some reason in Washington, we're insulated from all of that. So I say, I guess it's the end. Let me leave you on a little bit of sense of optimism about this, which is there are people there on both sides of the aisle who believe this is an issue that we've got to deal with. We have to construct a politics that can allow us to deal with it. And of all the issues that we confront, from immigration to our failure to educate kids adequately in America's urban school districts, including the one that I worked in, to the fact that too many people are denied the right to vote, that we're not investing in our infrastructure, that we're leaving that next generation with a massive debt that they did not incur. All those things together, the thing I am most confident about is that we are going to lick this climate issue, because I've seen it in Colorado. I know that the idea that dealing with climate and not having a growing economy is not an essential path for us to take, but that we can actually have both, and that we can build a new economy in the United States around renewables, around retrofits of existing infrastructure, around our energy sector and our transportation sector. And I have no doubt that the greatest inventions in this work, whether it's in transmission or storage or anything in between, is stuff that's going to be done in the United States of America. So thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it. It's great to see all of you. It's nice to be back in Ohio. Go Brown.
Good evening. Good evening. You know, I want to really thank you for participating in this year's summit, and I hope you enjoyed yourself and got a lot out of it. And thank you for all the hard work and thought you put into this summit, particularly in your presentations. And I want to remind you again that we do expect to see you next year, which is the year of the people. And we expect to have a culmination that really talks about what have we done over the last decade, and have we made the lives of people better as a result of this work that we've done as a city, but the work that you've done as individuals and as organizations. So again, I'll see you next year.